Have you ever noticed something strange about history? The most powerful empires on Earth often spent centuries building systems, laws, and institutions. And then, at the height of their power, they stopped following their own rules, not because they were weak, because they believed they had become too powerful to need them. And that moment, that exact moment, has appeared again and again throughout history. The Roman Empire, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, even the great powers of the modern world. Different flags, different languages, different centuries. Yet they all made the same mistake. Today, we're going to explore the moment empires stop obeying the rules they created, and why that moment may be the most dangerous phase in the life of any superpower. Because history suggests something uncomfortable. Empires rarely collapse when they are weak. They collapse when they believe they are untouchable. Let's begin. The Roman Empire spent centuries creating one of the most sophisticated legal systems the world had ever seen. Roman law was one of the foundations of Roman power. People trusted the empire because they believed there were rules. Predictable rules. Stable rules. Rules that applied to everyone, at least in theory. But as Rome grew stronger, something changed. Increasingly, exceptions appeared. The law still existed. But powerful people were no longer constrained by it. Political rivals were eliminated. Emergency powers became normal. Institutions that had once protected the Republic became tools of the state. The system did not collapse overnight. Instead, the rules slowly became optional. And once enough people realized that, trust began to disappear. Because the true strength of an empire is not its military, its legitimacy. The belief that the system itself deserves to exist. And legitimacy is incredibly difficult to rebuild once lost. Centuries later, another empire repeated the pattern. The Spanish Empire controlled vast territories across the globe. Gold and silver flooded into Spain from the Americas. At first, this wealth seemed like proof of permanent success. Why follow economic discipline when treasure ships arrive every year? Why worry about productivity when mountains of silver are flowing into your ports? The empire became increasingly dependent on extraordinary advantages. And over time, the rules that had created prosperity mattered less. Debt expanded. Spending expanded. Short-term power replaced long-term stability. For a while, it worked. Then reality arrived. Spain declared bankruptcy multiple times despite possessing some of the greatest wealth in the world. Because wealth alone cannot save a system that abandons discipline. Then came Britain, the largest empire in human history. An empire that controlled nearly a quarter of the world's population. For generations, Britain championed principles such as free trade, financial stability, and predictable governance. Those principles helped create enormous prosperity. But maintaining global dominance became increasingly expensive. The temptation to bend rules grew stronger. And eventually, the cost of preserving the empire exceeded the benefits of maintaining it. the system could no longer sustain itself. Not because Britain suddenly became poor, because the gap between its ambitions and its reality became too large. History was repeating itself again, and now we arrive at a difficult question. What about today? Look around. Across the world, governments increasingly invoke emergencies. Temporary measures become permanent. Exceptional actions become normal. Political polarization grows. Institutions face declining trust. And perhaps, most importantly, many people feel that rules apply differently depending on who holds power. Whether that perception is true or false is almost irrelevant, because trust depends on what people believe. And once trust begins to erode, societies become harder to govern. History shows that empires rarely announce their decline. There is no official ceremony, no warning alarm, no headline that says, "The age of dominance ends tomorrow." Instead, decline often begins with a subtle change in behavior, a belief that rules are for other people, a belief that power itself is enough, a belief that success is permanent. And that may be the most dangerous illusion in history, because every empire eventually faces the same test. Can it remain disciplined when it no longer has to? Can it follow the rules when nobody is strong enough to force it to? Can it limit itself when it has the power not to? Most fail, not because they lack resources, not because they lack armies, not because they lack intelligence. They fail because power changes incentives. And eventually, the system starts consuming the very principles that created it. The lesson of history is not that empires are evil, nor is it that collapse is inevitable. The lesson is much simpler. Rules matter most when it becomes easy to ignore them. That is the moment that determines the future. The Roman Empire faced that moment. Spain faced that moment. Britain faced that moment. Every great power eventually does. And perhaps the most important question is this: when historians look back at our own era, will they say we learned from history? Or will they say we repeated it once again? Because the day an empire stops following its own rules may already be the day its future begins to change. So, is history repeating itself once again? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter in economic history.